So we are going to be talking about a particular topic that basically PP, perspective philosophy, got into a bit of, I don't know if you call it drama, on Twitter. Catherine, if you'd like to give some context for this, then that would be delightful.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot of context just because I don't go on Twitter. But I followed the Surf Times with Lance, and I generally really like him. And I was kind of bummed by his reaction to Perspective Philosophy's video response to the Twitter drama. I understand how Perspective Philosophy's tweet was inflammatory and like why he got some pushback for it. I understand that. So we don't really need to talk about that.
Yeah,
but
we won't
I
be
wanted
really,
to, yeah. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that Lance says in his response that I thought were just silly and I thought we could react to together. So
I think
okay.
that it is not only a more ethical way of living, but I think it is sustainably far better for the environment. In order to have the meat that we meat consumers have, we have to use an inordinate amount of food production, water, just to produce food to be able to feed to the things that we will then turn into food. And in that process and pursuit under capitalism, especially because we have this hyperconsumption and we overproduce food in the current system we have, thank you, K-pop girl. As a vegan, I dislike vegans who try to lodge in veganism. This guy sounds like an anti-fap Joaquin. Best possible description. Anti-fap joy kill. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm going to get to that K-pop girl because I'm going to get to what is important is actually getting more people to eat vegan and how we can actually go about doing that and how we have successfully proven how we go about doing that using facts and logic. Yes, I'm going to have to use some actual statistics here, all right?
Can I ask, is he vegan?
Pause. No. So, okay, pause for a second.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting in the beginning when he says, I agree with vegans. I think that it's the more ethical thing to do and it's more sustainable. So that just demonstrates a misunderstanding because it's not the more, like, obviously it is more ethical, but like he's phrasing it as if it's like a virtuous thing to do. Like, yeah, vegans are more ethical. He doesn't recognize it as a moral obligation for himself to be vegan.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that people who, pay for hitmen and then people who don't, and are actively against that, you wouldn't say that those people who don't pay for hitmen are like more ethical, even though that is the case that they are. It's like, no, but you're the problem. You're the one who's actively engaging in a behavior that is harmful. And, we don't have pats on the back, like for just not doing harmful things. So it does set this precedent, as you say, that it's not some moral obligation. It's just this virtue. Absolutely. I agree.
And he's saying like, I agree with vegans, but we'll get to it later down in the stream. He doesn't agree with vegans. He agrees with like the reducitarians.
Oh. Okay, right. Let's carry on then.
But anyways, when it comes to perspective philosophy and this fucking atrocious goddamn take, you can pursue veganism without stigmatizing addiction. Completely agree with this, by the way. I'm not. Addiction is awful and painful, which is why therapy to aid self-restraint and recovery is essential. She has many of the same sympathy I reserve for animals. Oh, how nice of you. How benevolent. Perspective philosophy, once again. You mean besides addiction being a form of exploitation? Or how self-restraint and solution are to both problems? Only through taking
you can pause,
responsibility for...
Because I think he just goes on to talk about
the issue
addiction
at hand specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. So one issue I had there was that he is so outraged by the way perspective philosophy chose to convey his point. And I'm not saying that it wasn't inflammatory. Like I said earlier, I understand why people didn't appreciate the way he went about it. But Lance is blowing it up to where that is like so outrageous, like how egregious of him to stigmatize addiction. But if you actually ask perspective philosophy, like how he feels about addiction, he agrees that we shouldn't stigmatize it. And like, he has experienced it himself and he recognizes that it's a systemic problem. He's not just pinning it all on like personal responsibility. Like he is a leftist and I think he understands the problem from a leftist perspective. But Lance is making his stigmatization here seem so much more egregious than ContraPoint's support of animal abuse and torture.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a problem. That's just a tweet. Like, that's just a joke. She was just joking.
Mm-hmm.
But perspective philosophy is committing like a heinous, horrible act here by stigmatizing addicts. But ContraPoint's like making it seem like veganism is a life of deprivation and self-denial. Like, that's just a joke.
Not a problem at all. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Which is weird because, like, obviously I grant that spreading ideas and certain language can convey really bad things, and it can be harmful, absolutely. But if we weigh up the harm of that versus the harm of physically being exploited, mutilated, tortured, and that victim number being in the trillions, it's like there is a clear, like, we're not, as you say, we're not scaling it properly, and it just completely ignores it. I don't know if you saw, I haven't seen it yet, but Xanderhal has made a video about PP as well. And he'd probably do...
I haven't seen it.
Maybe we could look at it, but he'll probably do the exact same thing. And it's just like, oh, yeah, really good idea, more moral and all this, but how dare you... It's like funny as well how all these leftists come out of the woodwork to talk about veganism when a vegan optically looks bad. It's like they grant that any other time they want to talk to a vegan, they probably won't, their rhetoric probably won't be as good, or their optics won't be as good. So it's like they avoid, and then suddenly they all come out of the woodwork the minute a vegan stumbles or says something inflammatory that they can, bounce on. It's like, wow.
Right.
It seems really defensive.
Right.
But yeah, let's carry on.
And he's not being charitable because he's assuming a lot of things about Lewis. Like, he's assuming that he knows nothing about addiction, even though he gets to it later that he has experienced it personally.
The little bit that I saw of this as well, he also assumed that PP was rich, came from a middle-class family, which is really funny because I'm pretty sure PP has been perpetually poor his entire life.
Perspective philosophy's clarification. Aren't we watching the clarification? To clarify, I did not mention addiction as an insult, but I understand how some people may have misinterpreted my message. ContraPoints referred to a vegan life as a barren life deprived of self-denial, strikingly similar to how addicts view their life without their addiction. I was attempting to highlight... Jesus Christ. Fucking... That tweet was before the video. Okay. I understand.
46 million animals, all individuals, feeling pain and pleasure, fear, suffering, crying out, usually in dark, cramped spaces, so that individuals can have a preference for their flesh. It's not something that can be mocked, laughed at, downplayed.
Yeah, no one is on the other side of this. I am not trying to justify any of that. And
the thing is, though, you literally pay for it. Like,
well, that too. But yeah, so that, for one, that's a great point. But also, he's saying no one is doing this. What is ContraPoints doing?
Yeah, that was the whole reason that PP even engaged in the first place.
Exactly. Like, she is downplaying, and she doesn't recognize the severity of the issue because she's tweeting about how tofu is gross and veganism is a barren life of self-deprivation. Like, she doesn't understand, and she's not viewing it as an obligation. She's viewing it as a virtue, and she's making a joke about it. In that joke, she is mocking and downplaying their suffering.
She is, yeah, because like she's all like, oh, what also does a really good job other than tofu and does it better? Meat, i.e. the bodies of the beings that have been killed, exploited. And yes, I find it funny, someone asked me in the chat what I'm drinking. A life of self-deprecation. I've got a chocolate milkshake here, and I'm just so deprived, and I'm denying.
I just drink water, that's all. I'm just a breatharian, I just drink water.
I wish I had never found these milkshakes. They're gonna ruin my life. But yeah, it's just absolutely, like, I talk about this a lot, but animals are so oppressed and treated so much less than shit that they're not even acknowledged, to the point that when a vegan comes along and literally points out precisely what happens to them, people still don't acknowledge them. Like people still like they're so far from being considered that they can't see that if they were like, you know, another species of animal like a human, that you know, for Lance to hear what PP just said about, you know, they're perpetually exploited, killed, we use them in this way, and then be like, nobody's not acknowledging that, it would just look optically so awful. It would look really terrible. But because we're talking about other animals who don't matter, apparently, they can just get away with being like, oh yeah, nobody's acknowledging it. I don't try to justify it, even though I literally pay for it, and I literally pay for their bodies and secretions on my plate, probably, you know, on my items. It's wild. I just don't get it.
In fact, here's my thing with this, and what really surprises me. Say you advocate for something, like myself. You advocate for land back Indigenous rights quite a bit on your show, right? Is it going to be more beneficial for me to have a regular show where I start the thing up and then I say, all white people are settlers. They are horrifyingly disgusting settlers. They have blood on their hands, literal blood. Yes, you carry it on your hands. Look down right now. You will see they are red, most likely from the blood of the colonization that every single one of you has done. You are disgusting. Shame on you.
Wait. So is he gonna?
Yeah.
Like that's not what PP said. Like, so he's trying to analogize. Like, oh god, if I said the things that like he's implying PP said it, to say it's different to be like, you're responsible for this versus, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, blood on your hands.
You're disgusting.
You're disgusting.
When did he call her a disgusting
when?
drug addict? He
When?
didn't.
Like,
And okay, the other big thing that makes this disanalogous, is that a word?
Yeah, I think
is white people don't have like blood. I don't have blood on my hands. Like, I'm not a colonizer like my ancestors were, but I'm not actively doing that.
The furthest
you know
you can go, the furthest you can go is say that we still reap the benefits of what the ancestors did.
Of course,
we're not personally,
and we do have and of course, like, I do have to recognize that my ancestors did that, and that I should educate myself and not be ignorant and try to be as anti-racist actively, you know. But to say that I have blood on my hands for slavery, like, that's just not true. Like, I never enslaved anyone, but like Lance and ContraPoints they do have blood on their hands for paying for animal
like
products.
if you were paying for it,
that's just not a good analogy.
If you were paying into an industry that directly did enslave people and that was entailed in that, then you would have blood on your hands, like literally.
Right. And before anyone accuses me, if anyone's watching and isn't familiar with my content, like, I do not support slave labor. I try to buy exclusively secondhand. I do not buy from fast fashion or so so don't come at me with that. Like,
look at that. Is that item of clothing? Where's that from, Catherine? Like, oh my god, like, have you not considered? But yeah, like, obviously there are many different ways, unfortunately, that we can be unethical. Like, the system in which we're part of, it makes it very easy to engage in unethical activity. So, you know, we should be looking past veganism and looking at other aspects. And Catherine, of all the people I know, Catherine is like, you know, a perfect example of someone who does. But, you know, to ignore veganism as this obligation, you know, if you're concerned with these other things that people, you know, non-vegans will probably accuse you of at some point, is just ridiculous, considering the rights violations and how disruptive and destructive animal agriculture is, you know, to those problems. So yeah, just for context.
Spit on you. I spit on every single one of you. Anyone who is not fighting this moment to give land back to Indigenous people by the sword itself is, in fact, a police officer of the highest. Like, you can tell right away that, like, no one is gonna, like, people are gonna tune the fuck out. They're gonna be like, what the
Yeah, PP said all of those things. This is perfectly analogous. Yeah, like, of course.
What?
Yeah, absolutely. Why is he even saying this? It's like, you know how they say, like, because one of the things, and you've talked about this a lot on your channel, is that there's absolutely no need for vegans to exaggerate claims because it's bad enough. So if what PP right now was saying about the animals was bad enough, then why do you need to, like, make an analogy that's so exaggerated that's got like absolutely nothing to do with what he said. So it's not even worth making that criticism if PP's not saying those things. He doesn't at all.
Right.
I have seen that video, and he's just like I'm going to keep fighting for this because it's really responsible. And if you pay for that, you are responsible. That's what he says. It's got nothing to do with that. But yeah, let's carry on.
What is this? Or they'll just play me to mock me, obviously, because it would be fucking like, what is this fire and brimstone nonsense, right? But anyways, or is it more beneficial? Because ultimately what I want is not to posture, is not to like make people think, wow, that guy, he's really badass. He talks about like land.
He literally postured with veganism.
Yeah. And he's posturing now by being like such a fervent defender of drug addicts.
He's being a savior.
Yeah. And it's like, I just hate these empty criticisms of like, you're just moral grandstanding and da 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 da. It's like, no, vegans are not virtue signaling. We're asking for people to change their behavior. We're not just standing here telling people how great we are. Like, we want everyone to align their actions with their values and do what we're doing. Like, we're not trying to, like, you've made this point before about if you wanted to virtue signal, you would just talk about leftist politics. You wouldn't,
or like environmentalism,
less,
like straws, plastic straws, yeah,
things that everyone is pretty, well, not everyone is on board with leftist politics, maybe that's a bad example, but like, you would talk about things that like the majority are on board with.
Exactly.
You wouldn't ever, what's the word? Stir the pot, you know?
Yeah, like, the idea of virtue signaling is that people they agree with you and then they pat you on the back and it's like, oh god, yeah, I agree. It's for like validation.
But we get so much hate and like hostility towards us. Like,
I got told, I'm not even like doing too much at the minute, but I got told to kill myself like 2 times. Oh, I should say, I can't say. I got told to unalive myself in a game twice yesterday, and it's just like, yeah, this is virtue signaling. Yeah, everybody loves me right now for what I'm saying. Like, wow, yeah. He's not.
The other thing is,
at all. Yeah,
I don't like getting pats on the back from people who refuse to change their behavior.
Yeah,
so
that's
like,
a bad sign.
Lance is like telling vegans like how morally superior we are. Like, oh yeah, I agree, vegans are doing a great thing. Like, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. It doesn't make me feel good.
Not interested.
What makes me feel good is people who say, you've inspired me to change my behavior.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not inspired by people being like, oh, you've got really good ideas like that. Like, if I'm debating someone and they say that, it does not give me pleasure at all. Like, you're right, I'm going to change darts because I'd rather live in a world where we're not perpetually violating the rights of other sentient beings. Like, that would make me happy. Like, so I could get on with my life and complain about something else. But yeah, no, it's just, oh God, it is painful. I'm not doing that. Yeah, sure thing, Lance.
And back and calls everyone colonizers. It's fucking hilarious. No, is to actually have land back victories and have Indigenous people win land back. So, if you are a vegan and you're advocating for veganism, which again is a noble pursuit, getting more people to eat vegan is not only healthy for their lifestyle, it is better for the environment. It is also better for animals themselves because we treat.
Pause.
She's running.
This is one of my biggest pet peeves. I've heard this so many times in the last week that I'm gonna lose it. People always put the animals third. They always say veganism is really great for you know, not only your health and the environment, but also the animals.
Yeah, no,
it's always that order. I'm like, what the fuck?
I literally made a video on this like ex-vegan called Kira the other day, and they said,
oh, I saw that one.
Yeah, and they said, oh, you know, veganism's so good for yourself, for your health, for the environment, and also the animals. It's like, it's just like, and people will be like, oh, this is so gatekeepy. But if you know, put it in a different context where you have this kind of philosophy that's specifically catered to in the interests of a certain group, and then loads of people make it about like the final thing that they make it about is the thing it's actually about, that would be frustrating. Like, of course it's frustrating. Like, yeah, like big pet peeve of mine as well. Just sends me, and you just know that they're gonna do it as well. It's so like, it's like this is where your priorities lie. They're not with the victims. So you don't really agree with vegans. You're not seeing the animals, you know, as individuals who are deserving of their rights. They're such a last thought to you. It's pain.
Eat animals in the most inhumane fucking ways possible. I am on board with all of you. So what exactly is going to win? Is this...
I just want that pet peeve right there, in the most inhumane way possible. I know that he probably thinks that there's a humane way to kill an animal, just by the way that he's saying that, and he probably, like, because I just want to, just in case he does think that, is there a humane way to kill someone who you haven't garnered consent from to kill? Because my answer's fuck no. But he might be like, well, you know, if you like pat them on the back, you know, you give them a little cuddle every so often, and then you stab them behind the head and they didn't even see it coming, then hell yeah. Right, why did you make me watch this with you?
just wait for the vegans are anti-Indigenous. It's coming up real soon. Just you wait.
Oh man. Okay, right, breathe.
Unfortunately not. Because this has been tried. People have been doing this strategy for a very, very long time. The whole, like, people showing up, showing you videos of factory farms, disgusting you, even documentaries that show that, they have been proven statistically to have a temporary effect, right? People will stop eating for a little while, and then at some Thanksgiving dinner, someone's going to have some fried chicken out there, they're going to smell it, all of those endorphins are going to go off, and they're going to be like, okay, well, maybe just one little one. I mean, it's already dead, it's not going to hurt anything, it's already been killed. Oh my god, I love it so much. Oh god, I've been missing this. Oh yeah, I gotta have 12 burgers right now. Where is it?
Pause. This has nothing to do with the effectiveness of showing the footage and everything to do with how powerful social norms are. Because he's saying that all the science and all the data shows that showing footage and guilting people or whatever is ineffective because it only works temporarily and then people just go back to eating animals. It's like, that doesn't mean that it's not effective. That only means that we live in a society where it's like so normalized and there's so much social pressure to not be vegan. You know? And
you carry on.
I don't think that's a reason to like not show people factory farm footage. No, that's just a reason.
And it ignores like the rest of the psychological data, like for example the sleeper effect. It may be the case that someone's come across the footage for the first time and they're like, oh god, that's freaked me out, I'm never going to do that again. Then they do it, and then they go back, and then again they see something vegan, and again like 6 months later they see it, and then the sleeper effect comes in, and then suddenly they realize that, okay, well, that was the body of a once sentient being, and make that connection. Just because they might see it then give up doesn't mean that in a year's time they'll have that same view of animals. So I'm skeptical of that data anyway. I'd want to see what he's even talking about, because
I think he's just talking out of his ass.
Yeah. With this, you've got to be careful with the methodology of qualitative data as well. You know, in the way I've noticed with a lot of data surrounding veganism, it's lumped in with other things like reducitarian, pescatarian. So it's like I don't really trust much of it to begin with, but I'd like to see the study itself. But I don't think he. Let me just double check. I don't think he.
Absolutely not. He absolutely did not like
No, he did not. No, there's no link.
Oh, notice the description.
Every time a vegan is a prick, a cheeseburger is consumed.
Yeah, but nobody is mocking the suffering of animals. Okay?
Yeah, nobody.
He's not mocking the suffering of animals, but that's his
nobody
description for his video.
Nobody. Are you like actually kidding? He's like taking the actual piss, like genuinely. Oh, right, okay. Nobody's mocking it, but ContraPoints literally did, and more downplayed it. And then you are actually mocking the suffering and death of animals. So nice one, Lance. It's just the slime.
So, you want more people to become vegan. Guess what? Great news, everyone. They are. Statistically right now, there are more vegans, and they are at a growing rate faster than they ever have been. Veganism, I believe, used to be statistically about 1% of the US population. As of right now, they are making a shocking 6% of the US population. This is a good thing. What has changed that? What has changed consumer behavior? Turns out it's not something you're really going to like. It's a little bit more trendy. It's kind of like veganism TM, but a lot of it happens to do with A trending towards plant-based eating because we have a lot more products on the markets these days, and it's become a bit of a fad. It's become a bit of a thing.
Okay, I hate this argument because why are there so many plant-based options on the market now? Do you think maybe it could be vegan influence?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course, reducitarians are driving a large percentage of that demand. I get that. But like, to say that it's just because we've introduced these new products, like had we never done any animal rights advocacy, would we have all these products on the market? No,
there's got to be, if you're making a product, there's got to be incentive to make that. Otherwise, you're going to lose profit.
Right.
If there's no incentive or no market for it in the beginning, then companies aren't going to take the risk of making that product. So that incentive is constantly being pushed. There's like that billionaire philanthropist, I forget his name, but he thinks that dairy will die by 2030.
Bill Gates?
No, it was a different one. And I don't know for the life of me, but he literally said in an interview, dairy will be dead by 2030.
Richard Branson?
No, not a popular one.
Oh.
He's like a billionaire philanthropist, apparently. And it's like these companies, obviously they've got to keep, crystal clean and everything like that. And a lot of the time they are part of an industry or are an industry that exploits and kills animals. So they're not going to come out and be like, yeah, well, ethically, like it's so bad to, consume the bodies of animals, like we're doing these instead. They are seeing and hearing the ethical contentions that people have with these products. You think that they aren't recognizing these hordes of like vegans who are like, meat is murder, like how dare you sell these products? You think they're just like, no, I think it's just people like plants all of a sudden. It's like, you think I don't get it. I don't get it. And the thing is as well, this is an article and I see very few I'm very skeptical of, like articles saying, oh, this is why this has happened. And then they don't link too much. I see a few hyperlinks, but it's usually when you look at these articles, you go onto the link, it's just another article. So I'd have to see the article and see like whether or not they're actually substantiating the points that they're making. I'm not sure.
Your Impossible Burgers, your plant-based burgers, your Beyond Meats, all this kind of stuff. Plant-based foods are becoming the new organic. Yes! In addition, Nestle, one of the evilest companies in the world, but is also the largest food company in the world, predicts that plant-based foods will continue to grow and the trend is here to stay. So it turns out a lot of people, they agreed with you. A lot of people don't eat meat because they get off at the torture of animals. They eat meat because they like the taste of it, and also
how does this explain we've got a growing industry for vegan products outside of food? So how is that happening as well if it's only just about the plant-based people eating different foods? We've literally got, all these companies bringing out like pineapple leather and, Dr. Martens, like 3 years ago, they brought out vegan leather shoes. And when you go to shops, like I went past a Superdry the other day and one of their main things outside was vegan shoes. It's like, well, if it's all plant-based eaters, then how do we explain the rest of that? What is incentivizing people to have those vegan products instead that don't go in their mouth? It's just not, it doesn't explain it. I just want to.
Sometimes they like the reward system and what they're getting back from it. So as all these like modern new versions of meat alternatives started flooding the markets, now we have meat chicken tendies at A&W's. I can go to my A&W's, I can get vegan chicken tendies and enjoy them, and they taste pretty damn close to real chicken tendies. People are going to choose that. Turns out Beyond Burgers, once they became an option and they didn't taste horrid, even though Beyond Burgers, I'm sorry, they're not that great. Impossible Burgers, way better than Beyond Burgers. Impossible Burgers actually taste like meat. Beyond Burgers tastes like this kind of nifty coconut turnip product. But anyways, I'm going all over the process.
So he's acknowledging that these products exist and that they are very tasty. So why aren't you vegan, Lance?
Well,
like if you know these products exist and you have the means, which you do, like... What?
I know.
He's like, oh yeah, once these products come out, people will just choose them. They're still not, and they're out, and they've been out for like 10 years. Well, some of them. Mm-hmm. So it's like, clearly people need convincing and they need motivation and they need a reason to be vegan more than just oh, this product exists. Like before I was vegan, I didn't even know about these products. Like they weren't on my radar. Like, I mean, a lot of people know about them now, but they're still not really thinking about them. You know what I mean?
No, like they've been on the shelves for a long time, and it didn't even cross my mind that these things existed. It was like a new world to me. After I realized, eating animals is a bit messed up, really.
It's just frustrating to me because like when I went vegan almost 10 years ago, there were quite a lot of products on the market, not nearly as much as there are now, but like I literally had never even heard of them. Like it was not on my radar at all. And then I went vegan. Okay. I don't understand how like it's 2021 and there's all these products and like so many people acknowledge them and eat them and love them and talk about them, then they're not vegan. And I'm just like, how? Like, why? You know what I mean?
I know, especially the left ones who are like, oh yeah, I agree with veganism. It's like the better position and stuff like that. It's like, well, and a lot of the time, I think they're saying that like to kind of shut down an argument against them because they just don't want to have that argument because it's a really difficult one to have because unfortunately, being on the side of abuse in any context is the most difficult side to defend. So, you know, it's difficult for them. So I think they just say it. It's like lip service, isn't it? I don't think, you know, well, anyway, let's see what other genius takes we have.
Alternatives, very highly processed. They're not healthy. No, this trend does not coincide directly with an increase in health, but I'm talking about what is exactly winning over right now. Here's more compelling proof to prove the global demand for plant-based foods is increasing.
I just want to say there, like, a lot of people, the reason they go plant-based is for health. And then he just said, oh, yeah, well, you know, it's not for health, but, you know, people are being moved over by it. So it's like, well, if it isn't for health and they're eating processed crap, but that does not contain the bodies and secretions of animals, what do you think is leading them to do that? It's like he had a moment there where he like swallowed, he like went, so it's like deep down he knows that there's something else that's grabbing people. It's not just this plant-based for fun. You know, I mean, obviously if something's a trend, some people do it willy-nilly, but you know, if they're eating this garbage, because that's, you know, the junk food, I eat the garbage, I got a milkshake right here, you know, there's something else driving us to pick that product rather than the other one. So I just
Search data from Google Trends shows an impressive worldwide increase in interest in veganism from 2004 to 2018. Top regions include Israel, Australia, Canada, Austria, and New Zealand. There's been a 600% increase in people identifying as vegans in the US in the last 3 years alone, according to a report by Global Data. Only 1% of consumers used to be claimed to be vegan in 2014. In 2017, that number is rising to 6%. There's other factors, by the way. There's going to be, of course, a concerted effort to people being like, well, how can I help this whole global climate catastrophe? That's a big problem as well. What can I do? In the UK, the number of people identifying as vegans has increased by 350%, increased from a decade ago. So it's basically gone from 1% to 6% overall. Portugal, vegetarianism rose by 400% in the last decade. You know what's funny though, by the way, as someone who like, you know, often does eat a kind of a vegan-based vegetarian hybrid style diet myself, but I do have moments where I will eat meat occasionally. Instead of recommending like plant alternatives, I would recommend recommending Indian food. I mean, I'm sorry for people who don't like spice,
skip ahead.
Holy fuck,
he's just
Indian
talking about food for a little bit.
Okay, what do you want me to skip ahead to?
That's a good point. Maybe put it on like 1.5 speed.
Okay, yeah, let's speed him up a little bit. Like 1.5, gotcha.
It is like everything across the board. It's like, it's one of the few forums where like if someone's like, do you want to go get food? And I'm going to a vegan Indian restaurant, I'm just as excited as if I was going to a steakhouse. I'm going to be like, fuck yes, baby. Oh man, yeah, get me some of this shit. I love it all, right? I love dals. I love fucking chickpea curries, all of it. Oh man, it's just like sucking to my veins. Fucking delicious. Chutneys, unbelievable. Dosas, unbelievable. All that shit. I love that stuff. It is so fucking good. All of it.
It's making me hungry.
And it's also fun to cook at home. I built a cooking stream one time. I got really heavy into making homemade Indian food that a lot of people were kind of blown away that someone as creamy as myself was pulling off. But anyways, the fire and brimstone style stuff, it doesn't work. It statistically doesn't work. You do not convert people to veganism. Like, unfortunately, some things, like if there is...
He's not substantiated. He's saying that it doesn't work based on an article that, and PP didn't do that.
Yeah.
he's so off the point. Like, he's just gone off on this tangent that's got nothing to do with, like, PP didn't do that. you've also
I guess he was triggered by perspective philosophies. I guess I feel weird saying pee-pee.
I take any chance to say pee-pee. I would do it. I'm not afraid. Don't be afraid of the pee-pee, Catherine.
I think he was triggered when he said that veganism is not about virtue, it's about vice. It's not about being a saint, it's about not being a sinner.
Yeah.
And since he's using that language, maybe that's where the fire and brimstone vibe comes in. But it's like
I think it's interesting as well, because how people will react reveals what they're feeling about a situation. And I think he's showing how he feels really defensive about this whole situation, because PP said those things, but they were not anything like what Lance is saying. To say,
right, he wasn't like, you're a disgusting drug addict, you have blood on your hands, you're a murderer, you suck.
Absolutely. So he heard it, but he must have. Either he's lying and trying to make PP look bad, or he heard it like that.
Right.
So,
right.
It could be he could have genuinely heard PP go, "You're a piece of shit. You're this," and because often people do get defensive when you bring up veganism, even if you are like as cordial as you are, like you still get you calling us pieces of shit for saying that. It's just like, where did I say that? Yeah. Oh God, right, carry on.
I want him to get to the part about Indigenous hunting.
Yeah, which is interesting because I literally just brought out a video on Vosh yesterday, and he said that was the dumbest
That's a bad argument. I saw that. Yeah.
Catherine Klein watches all of my videos, just mega fan. So
lab-grown meats, once lab-grown meats become affordable and mass-produced, that is going to replace a very large sector of the meat production industry. And I hope it does, to be totally honest with you, because it should. It's way more humane if we are growing unsentient meat just in like little jars and vials. How healthy it's going to be, how cost-effective, how much more money.
It's way more humane. It's not inhumane.
It's not inhumane.
It's like, it's not. If something's not sentient, it's just like a blob of an object. It's not it's not a subject that you can be inhumane to.
Yeah, we're probably nitpicking a little, but
yeah.
Anyways,
well, what we like with the nitpickers.
But he hasn't demonstrated that he understands that all slaughter is inherently inhumane.
Exactly,
so.
And that's why I feel the need to nitpick it, because it's very unclear. But yeah,
right.
To save, I mean, what I've read the reports so far seem to think that it has a much better environmental impact than the current systems that we have, such as just regular meat, outside of the ethical element. But advocating for things like that, advocating for plant-based alternatives that could be delicious, right? Like Impossible Burgers, Impossible Nuggies, whatever. That kind of stuff seems to work, seems to change more people, because people they're not eating meat because they get off at the idea of watching animals suffer. Like, unless you're a psychopath, and I don't mean that to be an armchair activist or anything, or to be an armchair psychiatrist. Like, if you are an actual diagnosed psychopath and you do not have any response to watching human animal suffering, you most likely care about whether or not animals are suffering. You've just detached yourself.
Yeah, so perspective philosophy recognizes this. He understands that it's indoctrination. It's not that everyone gets off on eating meat because they enjoy the fact that they're harming animals. Like,
he
the vast majority of people he acknowledges are not psychopathic. So this whole point that he's making is just completely irrelevant. Like
PP notes, he says that all the time. We act irrationally because we're indoctrinated into thinking certain things, and we don't think for ourselves. So it's not applicable to PP. And as well as that, I just think there are genuine psychopaths. I know 2 diagnosed psychopath vegans, right? And they do a better job than you do of considering victims. They don't care. They don't care about, they don't have that empathy present, right? But
they recognize the logic.
They recognize the logic. So they're doing a better job than you are of actually considering other individuals, because you don't actually have to care. Catherine, it aggravates me, right? It really does. Let me just, right, I'm so sorry. But when people seem to think that you have to care about an individual in order to just grant them the basic rights to just leave them the fuck alone. I don't get it.
Factory farming. You've pushed it out of you don't think about it at the end of the day. No one does. We're so far removed from the production line when we go to the supermarket, or even better, or I should say worse yet, when we go into the store and we buy a burger, right? I'm not thinking about the grain that was grown from scratch and harvested to feed the cow that was raised for a couple of years.
This annoys me as well, right? Because it's you're not thinking about it, but you know it. Like he's
Yeah.
demonstrating right now that he knows exactly what goes into that burger. Oh, I'm not thinking about it. Yeah, but you fucking know, don't you? So you know now what you're going to do about it. Like, oh, well, we're indoctrinated into, like, not thinking about it. And though I can see past the indoctrination now, and I'm not indoctrinated, apparently, you know, like, I don't even, you know, I know what went into this, but I'm not actively thinking about it. It's okay, well, now you have the information. So you are being worse than someone who is indoctrinated. You're not part of this group who actually don't know what happens, because there's a lot of them still. But you're not one of them, so what are you doing? You know exactly what happens, and you're taking no action. Like, is Lance another one who thinks that we'll get, like, a revolution? And we'll see.
Probably.
Because...
Yeah, he does mention at some point that he thinks this is a moral atrocity that we'll look back on and be, like, horrified that
why are you participating in it?
It's just, like...
It's, like, I don't get the left who, like, when I look back at, you know, things that happened, and I think, oh my God, like, how did people, and they'll say this as well, they'll be like, how did people, like, let that happen? And then I realise, oh, well, the very people who think, oh my God, that was horrible, that thing that happened ages ago, are like Lance. They would have just been part of it. Like, in the past, you would have been part of the things. You would have thought things were wrong, but been part of them anyway, even though you acknowledge, well, in a long time from now, you know, not granting women their basic rights to vote and everything would probably be a really bad thing. But, you know, I won't help them. I won't call for it. And in fact, I'll, like, probably cause a bit of a problem for them and, you know, spread some information that's not the case about women and, you know, why they shouldn't have rights and stuff like that. He'd have probably been one of those people. Like, so it's like, oh, I understand exactly why these atrocities happened, because people just want to make excuses for their behavior and just carry on. Depresses me, Catherine. It, like, hurts me. Right, should we carry on? I don't want to.
In captivity. The tomatoes that were grown somewhere in South or Central America, harvested early, green, and then they were sprayed with a chemical that makes them ripen rapidly in a cargo ship that transported them. Then
this is all so irrelevant. Just skip ahead and see if he starts talking about Indigenous people.
Okay. So then you go about your day. Them 2 fucking large pizzas for $12 or whatever the latest special is. That's going to feed the whole family for $12. Whereas if they go off and they're going to make an organic, delicious, sustainable, vegan meal for all their kids and teach them about why this is all an impressive thing, it's going to take hours to procure all these things and put them together.
Okay, this is what he's getting at here is the whole veganism,
inaccessibility,
is privilege, inaccessible, and it's like not Bosch, Lance.
Yep.
We're talking about you, and we're talking about ContraPoints here.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of you are in this situation, so why are you bringing this up?
And, like, there are countless vegans who will talk about how, you know, you can make it work in your given area. I mainly know poor vegans or low-income vegans, and it is the case that people I've spoken to in, like, different countries, they can make it work. They've got, like, microwave meals that they can put in there that's a vegan one. There's a lot of things that are vegan by default. Loads of, like, what is referred to as accidentally vegan products that are just cheapo because plant foods are cheap.
I think that they exaggerate, like, how inaccessible it is, because I recognize that lifestyle changes are difficult when you're poor, in like true genuine poverty, but, like, I don't know. It's just like it's more difficult, and we should acknowledge that. But, like, it's still an obligation to not cause harm when we can.
That is just not realistic, right? Like, you understand why, on a main scale, what you're advocating for is going to be available in a lot of ways to very upper middle class bougie people who want to have vegan TM.
I just want to make the claim there that, of course, it's going to be more accessible to bougie people because everything's more accessible to bougie people. That's just not a point. That's the case for non-veganism as well, Lance. Ding dong.
It's going to be very difficult for them to do that if they're in regions of the United States that have food deserts. Like, that is where you should be placing your advocacy. Unless it is about having moral superiority, unless it is about feeling as if, like, you are the one true vegan. If it's not about that, and it's genuinely about converting people to veganism on a mass scale, if that is what you want, then you should be doing things that are going to be more effective at achieving your goals. You should be doing things that are going to help people who happen to be in impoverished conditions get education about nutrition, get education, and also get access to foods, perhaps, that they don't have access to otherwise, right? Teach people that you can sustain yourself very well on legumes. And legumes are cheap.
Can you imagine how enraged Lance would be if that's where I put all my focus on? Like, instead of, like, talking to people in a similar social class about how they can change their behavior because it's easier for them and it's way more accessible for them, therefore they have a greater obligation to make those changes. what if I just put all of my advocacy into going into low-income areas and educating people about plant-based nutrition? He would be like, "You're a white savior." Like,
yeah, true. You would, yeah, like literally be like, "How dare you can't win? You can't win with this line of thinking. You genuinely can't." Someone just said, where was it? Oh, I think this may be the only YouTuber who'd be willing to have an actual live debate. So it might be worth saying that either myself or Catherine, I know Catherine would be well up for, you know, having a discussion, you know, on this and getting Lance to actually understand what veganism is to begin with, because that's a clear issue that we're having here. And to talk about, you know, how he ought to make that change if he's recognizing apparently these problems, and to stop playing lip service. I'd be down for that. We'd be more than down to do that. Yeah, like I agree, Marley. I think he'd maybe be up for it, but I don't know. We could reach out.
Yeah, I would love to talk. I genuinely like Lance. Like, Lance, if you're watching this, I think you're a really cool dude, and I think we could have a productive discussion.
Then you could be good cop, I'd be bad cop. Classic. That's how it works.
Like, the creepy shit is not going to convert anyone to veganism. You know? That's...
You haven't substantiated that.
Just the case. And please, stop talking down
Substantiate
to Indigenous people if they're not vegans.
Here we go.
In those circles.
Here we go.
Oh, yes, they're slaughtering whales.
Why are you bringing this up?
Yeah, why is he saying that? Because PP didn't bring that up even at all.
Wait, you should rewind. I want to, because I was kind of talking over him.
Yeah, no, I can do that.
Play that clip one more time, sorry.
And please, stop talking down to Indigenous people if they're not vegans. It's also something I found in those circles. As in, like, oh, yes, they're slaughtering whales unsustainably, and it's cruel, and they have to realize they're moral. Like, stop trying to impose your moral framework on other communities that aren't liberated yet. I think it's incredibly yikesy.
Okay, so he's saying it's yikesy to hold the same standard for people of different races and cultures.
Yeah, a bit patronizing. I want to get in with this. You can see my video that I literally just uploaded yesterday. I think this is really poignant though. Let's just let's just look at this real quick, right? Okay.
Anti-vegans do? Oh, okay, this is a really dumb argument. Please, guys, never ever do this argument, okay? When if somebody is like, "Hey, veganism is good, we should all be vegan," and your response is, "Huh. Well, in the Uwatu tribe in the far north, they have nothing to eat but whale blubber and bear fat. How dare you suggest their culture, their like," or when woke ass lefties will be like, "You're destroying the cult. How dare you say the native culture? Fuck you." It's just don't make those arguments.
Thank you, Vosh. Thank you,
Vosh.
So there's always a conflation here. There's the conflation between talking about veganism and holding the same standards regardless of culture, and then the inaccessibility for certain tribes to have plant-based options. So like, those are two different things. So if we're talking about don't talk down to Indigenous people, like, how dare you impose your morals onto them? It's like, if we're talking about Indigenous people who have access to grocery stores and like have the same access as anyone else, like, their culture is not a justification for them to continue to exploit animals. Like, culture is not a justification for violence.
If you wanted to go through that, you would say that you'd have to say things like female genital mutilation is justified.
Exactly.
You don't want to do that.
Exactly.
But yeah, carry on.
But what Vosh is saying, or what Lance goes on to say in a second, is like a different argument. Because yeah, if we were going into these remote areas of the world where people are like living in a rural fishing village and they're eating fish to survive, like, that's a completely different argument, because that has to do with accessibility and possibility and practicality, rather than it's their culture.
Yeah, but the thing is though, if they don't have the access and they are very remote, they're not seeing this message anyway. So it's really weird to be like,
they're not watching
YouTube. They're never going to come across my YouTube video. If they are like in a very remote area where there's no internet access anyway, they'll never see me. They'll never know I exist. So just to get...
Well, maybe there's a tiny minority of people, because I think what he says is that they do have access to grocery stores. They might have internet connection.
Oh,
but
so he's okay. So
in the northern Canada, it is quite expensive to buy like foods at the grocery
Yeah,
store.
yeah.
So I'll just grant
I thought
that
he
there are
was talking
some
about
people,
like, you know, actual remote areas where they, you know,
Okay.
yeah, okay. But
so
yeah.
I will grant that in the next clip where he talks about how expensive it is to import foods to these rural, like remote areas of Canada where they do have grocery stores, it's just incredibly expensive.
Expensive, yeah.
That falls under the do what is possible and practicable for you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that's why that the definition is there and it exists. And you know, but it's very unlikely. It's more likely that I'm going to reach people who are in my sort of situation. You know, because we do have a habit of watching people who like similar things to us, and that's how the algorithm works. The algorithm tends to what you actually like. So it's, you know, that's why we go for people like, you know, Mr. Beast or Vosh and stuff like that, because I'm trying to hit specific people who watch specific or like specific things. And it's very unlikely that, you know, it's more likely that I will come across somebody who does have the means to do so. Or it might, or might similarly...
And we're talking about, sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, similarly, like me, not have all the money in the world, not even close, but still be able to make it work. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and we're talking about ContraPoints here. Do you know how much money ContraPoints makes?
Oh, she looks rich. Her videos...
She is rich.
Yeah.
She's extremely rich. Like, she can be vegan.
She got a
Lance
chef.
can be vegan. Bosch can be vegan. Yeah, like, this is just...
Oh, God, it hurts, right?
Sure.
Oh.
Yeah, here we go. Vegans are Indigenous people should be vegans by force. Like fucking $28 for a bag of grapes. $28.
I don't think vegans are going to these individuals and going, well, just eat grapes. Like, or, you know, it's just not a point.
I think these people, since they live in freaking Siberia or northern Canada, like, they are hunting for sustenance because obviously they can't afford to like buy all of their groceries at the grocery store if these are what the prices are, because that's how much it costs to import food. So it's like, I understand if they have to eat fish or hunt elk or whatever, but like, that's not the situation that ContraPoints is in.
Yeah, and exactly. And this stems, you know, just as I was talking about, like, in impoverished areas there will be higher crime rates, and I'm sympathetic to the person who goes into a shop and steals a loaf of bread for their family who are starving. You know, I'm sympathetic to them, you know, and that's like something that we typically regard as different to someone just like, if they have the means to buy that bread, it wouldn't have affected them to buy that bread, and they just steal it anyway from a little shop. It's like, we do view those things differently, like, so.
Right, exactly.
And PP, he's literally said this. He's even said these words. So again, not applicable. Ugh.
Yeah.
Good one.
I think we're done
hummus,
here.
snacking favorite.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we can move on to the next.
Yo, how when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them, say me no eat no fish, no meat now. How when me eat them, I wonder when me yam. When me tell them, say that I'm a vegan man. How when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them